Good afternoon, friends. Stephen Bennun here with the Bennun Institute of Biblical Research, as well as Israeli News Live. That's going to be airing in both locations there. And I'm going into the different aspects leading up to the crucifixion of Jesus. What happened, the things that happened, the people that were involved. Just a number of issues that I want to cover in this today. And I'm going to highlight a little bit before we get started where I'm going with the broadcast right now. Because we're going to be getting into Barabbas. We're going to be getting into the two false witnesses that were brought out. Many false witnesses, of course, but Scripture is saying two false witnesses were brought at the last. And, of course, the accusation made against Jesus that he was going to destroy the temple and raise it in 3 days. Now, we know he's talking about his body, but still there's still another false accusation that's made there. And a lot of people don't even pay attention to that particular accusation. We're going to be talking about hirelings as well, because it has to do a lot with what's happening here. The two goats, I won't go into too deep of that, but of course there is that type, the parallel in the Old Testament where you had the scapegoat, where we get the expression the scapegoat in modern day English, and the sacrificial lamb, being that Jesus was the sacrificial lamb, and of course Barabbas ends up being the scapegoat. He ends up being the one that's set free. So a lot of things that could be said here, and we're going to kind of dive into this, but I'm going to start here with Barabbas. This is probably the most, just highlighting a little bit about this before we get started in breaking all this down, mainly because of statements that are made about Barabbas almost tried to make it look like the Jewish people were doing a great thing when they were calling out for Barabbas. I don't really think that that was what Jonathan Cahn meant when he expressed that, but it kind of lightens the guilt aspect, so to speak, by saying that when they were calling on Barabbas, they were calling on the Son of the Father. Well, there's a possibility that that is totally false, but even if you were to say that, if you were to take, because Jonathan makes the argument that the Hebrew version of that, and let me find the right video. I think, yeah, I'm on the right one here. Nope, that's a different video there. Let's see if I can find this here. Where do I have you at, Jonathan? Let's see here. Here we go, right here. This is where Jonathan is talking a little bit about that. And quite frankly, I agree with him on the idea of the scapegoat, the sacrificial goat, etc. there. I do agree with that. But listening to what he says here just momentarily about the Son of the Father.
Of the Father, but according to the mystery. The word Barabbas, there's a mystery there. What does Barabbas mean? Barabbas actually comes from a Hebrew word. His real name was Bar Abba. Bar means son, and Abba means the Father. Barabbas means the Son of the Father. So you've got Jesus, Yeshua, the Son of the Father, and then you have Barabbas, that means the Son of the Father. In fact, in some ancient manuscripts, it even calls Barabbas Jesus Barabbas, that his name was that. So literally, his name was Yeshua Bar Abba. So you have Jesus, the Son of the Father, and Jesus, the Son of the Father. They had to be identical. Why? Because Messiah becomes identical with us, with Barabbas. That Barabbas, the criminal, could become the Bar Abba, the Son of the Father. He'd go free and live a new life in the hope of God. So here's the thing. You, me, we're Barabbas. And we are ready to be judged for our sins. We have judged.
Now, I'll just kind of pause it there. We don't need to go further into that. I'll post a link to Jonathan's video if you want to look at that. But in reality, even if we were to argue that Barabbas was the Son of the Father, and I know that there are those that kind of have made light of who Barabbas really is now because of the teaching that Jonathan did, we have to also remember too what Jesus says over here in John's Gospel, chapter 8, verse 44. Specifically, we'll start at verse 42. Jesus said unto them, "If God were your Father, you would love me. For I proceeded forth and came from God, neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech, even because you cannot hear my word? You are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, you believe me not. That's pretty doggone harsh, isn't it? So even if you want to say that Barabbas' name actually means son of the father, and if it is Bar-Abba, which Bar is, I think it's the Aramaic version of son. Ben is Hebrew version for son. Abba, of course, it is universal for father, or actually daddy, whichever, for both Hebrew and in the Aramaic language. But I'm going to challenge this, though. And the reason I'm going to challenge this, and I believe it'll stand more with the Gospel of John, is what we have written here in the Hebrew Gospel by Shem, who George Howard does a translation on this. Of course, I do my own translation work as well with this here, where he talks about Barabbas, or Barabbas, as they say. But does he actually use that terminology? Okay, so let's go down. I think it's in chapter 27 where I found this at. So I'm going to scroll down here a little further. Here we go, right here. Verse 20 there. The chief priests and the elders of the law assembled the people that they might ask for Barabbas and that Jesus might die. The very passage that he's referring to. All right, here we go right here. Now, and it says right here, and this is the very word right here for Barabbas that they're using here. Vehem amru Barabbas. Barabbas or Barabbas. Literally, what it means here is he is the son of, or the son in the fire. That's what it actually, his name means. The son in the fire. Barabbas. And it could be pronounced the same way if you take the sheen and give it as the letter sin instead, which would give it an S sound instead of a sh sound, like in shalom. All right. So Barabbas, okay, or Barabbas. Literally, like I said, son in the fire. That makes a little bit different when you begin to look at that. And this, of course, some might argue, well, we have the Greek manuscript. Our oldest Greek manuscripts we have for the New Testament go only back to about the 4th century. 4th century. 4th, 5th century, roughly in there. We don't have any originals to go back to. Same thing with Shem Tov's Hebrew Mathew. It's I forget exactly how old it is as well, but again, it's believed to be a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. No originals anywhere. So which one would be right? It could be argued either way. But either way wouldn't really matter, even if he is Barabbas or Barabbas, which could be pronounced Barabbas, still with a S sound instead of a sh sound. But one meaning the son in the fire, the other one meaning the son of the father. Doesn't even mean son of the father, just son, father. There's no word of in there. There's no extra letter in a case to be able to do that. You have to kind of put that as a conjecture. But there is a very more important message that we're going to get into in just a little bit about Barabbas. I just kind of wanted to start that off to share that with you so you could see some of these thoughts here that come to my mind as I look at these things there. So let's go back up here. We're going to go to the book of Mathew. Starting in chapter 26 and beginning here, verse 1 here. And it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these things, he said unto his disciples, you know that after 2 days is the feast of Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed and to be crucified. Then assembled together the chief priests and the scribes and the elders and the people under the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Jesus by subtlety and kill him. What I find interesting is that there were 2 trees in the Garden of Eden. You had the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, God had already commanded not to partake of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And that's right where the serpent was at the entire time, enticing Adam and Eve to partake of that tree, because he knew that once they partook of that tree, death would set in. There was some kind of change that obviously took place. If you remember, the scripture says when they awoke, or after they ate of the fruit of the tree, not that they awoke, but after they ate of the fruit of the tree, they both knew that they were naked. They were in a human body. And they woke up to that. That's why I use the word awaken. Now we come down to the time when the Messiah was to come on the scene. The restoration to restore back what Adam and Eve had actually lost. That's something I'll probably get into tomorrow, is the restoration here. What redemption really is. But when he came back, when Christ came here in the last days, 2,000 years ago for us though, he was also on a tree, on the olive tree. The cross itself was an olive tree. That olive tree, the fruit on that tree was Jesus Christ. And that was a fruit that had to be given. Now, Satan was trying to give of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which I hate to break it to most people, is the law. That's what knowledge of good and evil does. It's got some good to it, no doubt about it, but it also lets you know what's bad, what is good, etc. But it entraps you. It enslaves you into the world that we are living in now. Whereas Jesus Christ, if you remember, and when I say that, because some people, they kind of take offense, they love where we're at. You know, it's like a fish in a bowl. You get used to the bowl, you don't want to leave the bowl. You want to stay in the bowl. Well, the thing is once you wake up, the bowl is not where you need to be, that there's an ocean out there for you to live in. You want to get to that place. Jesus said, I go and prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may be also. I wasn't here on planet Earth. All right? Wasn't on planet Earth. So as I kind of, like I said, I'm going to skip over a lot of things that go into this as well, but, this is where we first find out that they're going to crucify him. But I just want to throw these thoughts in there for the trees there. And it says, now when Jesus was in Bethany, the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head, and he sat at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? This ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. Now Jesus, as we know the story, goes on, why are you troubled with a woman? For what she's done is a good work, right? For you have the poor always with you, but me you don't have always. And for that she has poured this ointment on my body. She did it for my burial. He says, verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also that this woman hath done be told for a memorial of her. So we don't want to ever forget what this woman did. And that's one reason why I actually started here in the very beginning here, so that you would actually get to hear the entire part of this broadcast. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went into the chief priests and said unto them, what will you give me, and I will deliver him unto you? And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time he sought opportunity to betray him. Now we're going to get into the betrayal. And the betrayal that not only happened 2,000 years ago, but the betrayal that has taken place even unto this day is what we're going to break down. Let's continue. Now, of course, we know at verse 21, Jesus, when he goes down, they're preparing the Passover, and he says that one of you will betray me. And we know the story about the Passover, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the Passover aspect of this right now, because I'm wanting to go more into betrayals, because the betrayals are on both sides. In the very camp of believers, we have 12 disciples that Jesus has chosen, knowing that one of them is actually playing the part of the devil, and that was Judas. He says, he that dippeth his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me. The Son of Man goeth as it is written of him. But woe unto that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It had been good for that man if he had not been born. So then Judas, which betrayed him, answered and said, Master, is it I? And he said unto him, Thou hast said. Every one of them were questioning among themselves. Was it them? Was it I? Lord, did I do it? He goes into all the offenses and things like that. That Peter would, because Peter talks about, Lord, I would die with you. And he says, you'll deny me 3 times before the cock can crow twice, I believe it is. And Jesus goes on a little further when he goes to pray, and he's asking the Lord that this cup would pass from him. And I'm skipping over a lot of this because, like I said, what I'm going to focus on is more of the betrayals that are going on. He says, watch and pray that you enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Going on down to verse 45. Then cometh he his disciples and saith unto them, then cometh he unto his disciples and said unto them, sleep on now and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me. And while he yet spake, lo, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now he that betrayed him gave them a sign, saying, whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Hold him fast. And forthwith he came to Jesus and said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. Jesus said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? Then came they and laid hands on Jesus and took him. And behold, one of them which were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck a servant of the high priest and smote off his ear. Then said Jesus unto him, Put again thy sword into his place, for all they that take the sword shall perish with the sword. Thinkest thou that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he shall presently give me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then shall the scriptures be fulfilled, that thus it must be? Now just hold the thought too, because Judas, not only does Judas betray Jesus, one of the 12, eats with him, drinks with him and everything. He's a whole part of the ministry of the 12. When Jesus sent them out abroad to cast out devils, heal the sick, they come back rejoicing, saying the devils are subject unto us. Judas was right there with them, able to do miracles, but willing to betray the true believer with a kiss. Will hug you, call you brother. Now I want you to think about the parallels of today. And still behind the scenes meeting with the Pharisees. Will hug you and kiss you and salute you as a brother. But all the while, in behind the scenes, consulting with the Pharisees on your demise. This is what's going to happen very soon. This is what a lot of evangelical ministers are doing right now. They, like hirelings, the scripture speaks about. They're like hirelings. They're not for the sheep. They're only for what they can gain from the sheep. They'll fleece you. They're very good at doing that. But that's about it, right? So let's take a look here. I also have this, and I need to go back up to chapter 26 because we'll get into this here in just a minute here too. Okay, yeah, we just got into that part there. All right. So as we move on down, verse 57, and they that had laid hold on Jesus led him away to Caiaphas to the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. But Peter followed him afar off into the high priest's palace and went in and sat at the servants to see the end. Now the chief priests and the elders and all the council sought false witnesses against Jesus to put him to death, but found none. Yea, though many false witnesses came, yet found they none. At the last came 2 false witnesses, and said, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. Now I kind of find it interesting that you have 2 false witnesses. Now, of course, scripturally, in order to put somebody to death, by law, you had to have 2 or 3 witnesses that bore record that he was guilty of death. Now, in this case here, and also in the Hebrew, we have that as well, they led Jesus to the house of Caiaphas the high priest, and all the scribes and Pharisees were gathered together. Now notice who's there. That's an important aspect that we don't. Let's see. Do we have that? Yeah, we don't have it in the Greek. It just says where the scribes and elders were assembled. But in the Hebrew, Matthew, we find out they led Jesus to the house of Caiaphas, the high priest. Then all the scribes and Pharisees were gathered together. Doesn't say anything about the Sadducees. They led Jesus to the house of Caiaphas. Peter was following him at a distance unto the house of the high priest, and he entered into the house and near the craftsmen until he should see the end. And the chief priests and the Pharisees wished to find false witnesses against Jesus in order to put him to death, but they did not find even one, though they provided many false witnesses against Jesus. Finally, 2 false witnesses came forward. They said, this one said, I have the power to destroy the temple of God, and after 3 days to repair it. Now, I think we have in the Gospel of John, let me see if I got the right place. Maybe it's the book of Luke. Still got to get back into these issues here too anyway, but let me just see where I had this at. Yeah, here it is right here. In verse 19, John chapter 2, the Gospel of John chapter 2, Jesus answered and said unto them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. He never said, I will destroy this temple. He said, destroy this temple, implying to them, right? Now, and found in the temple those, and this is also interesting too, and the Jews of Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to the Jerusalem, and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them all out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the tables, and said unto them that sold doves, take these things hence, and make not my Father's house an house of merchandise. That's another interesting thing that we find in this day and age, and just like we find 2,000 years ago. The house of God has been made a house of merchandise. It has become the commercial setting of the world. I mean, I understand a ministry that takes up an offering, but do we have to become salesmen? You know, I mean, granted, if you're doing if you're dealing with media or something like that, no problem whatsoever. And Jesus wasn't against the idea of free market. It's just in the house of God, it was not meant to be that way. And I'm not going to really harp on that. It's kind of obvious. I think people see that already. I hear people write to me all the time about those things, how that is done. And I certainly agree with you 100%. When you're on the gospel of Jesus Christ, look, if a ministry is preaching, and at the end of that or the beginning, however they want to do it, you know, if you want to ask the people if they want to give, because maybe they go to your church, maybe your church, you're the pastor of the church, you take up an offering or the tithing or whatever, that's perfectly fine as part of the service. I know that years ago when we had a little church there, what we did is we just had a box at the back of the church there, and then people could do it on their own free will. Didn't even, you know, occasionally we might mention it. Maybe once a month we'd say something about it, right? But nowadays it's everything. Everything you can think of is being sold right there at the altar. And the odd thing is if you think about it, what they were selling were things that people would need as they come up to offer their sacrifices under the law. So in a way, it didn't seem like a bad thing. You know, it's almost like, you know, and please forgive me, I don't mean this in judging anybody when I say this. Honestly, I really say this in sincerity, because I realize there's a right balance in things, right? But it'd be like you go in there and You have maybe CDs for gospel music that's being offered. Maybe a singer comes and sings at the church or something like that, and that's offered afterward. If it's offered afterward outside, I don't think that would be a problem. I don't think that's what Jesus is talking about there, right? But there again, though, you can see the parallel, though, with it. It's something that looks like it should be okay, but it wasn't okay. And I think it was more so because Jesus knew the spirit of the men that were in there. They were only there to make money off of the sheep that were coming in, the true believers, I should say, to fleece them. You didn't have a sheep and everything. Well, make sure we got you one. That type of deal there, right? It's sad, right? So anyway, it goes on. The disciples remembered, and it was written, the zeal of thine house hath eaten me up. Then answered the Jews and said unto him, what sign showest thou unto us, seeing that thou doest these things? And Jesus answered and said unto them, destroy this temple. In 3 days I will raise it up. Now there's a couple of things I want to bring out about this, right? One, we have the false witnesses came forward and said, this one said, I have power to destroy the temple of God, and after 3 days to repair it. Now, one, we know he's talking about his body. Secondly, though, he never said he would do it, they would do it. Destroy this temple, and I'll raise it up in 3 days. That's the false accusation. And they're trying to use it like he's inciting an insurrection. And against the Holy of Holies, the holy place of God, destroy it, but I'll build it back. And as I said, we knew it wasn't talking about the physical temple, but the body of Christ, the body itself, his body is what he was talking about. But what I do find odd also is the fact that here we are 2,000 years later. If you go by the calendar, we're actually going into the 3,000 year, beginning of the 3,000 year. So you could technically say we're in the third day because it's 2023. So 2,000 years have passed. Now 23 days into that third day is where we are right now. And what are they trying to do? Revive the third temple. Oddly enough, the third temple. And again, what I find interesting is that it is a false witness to say that you have to have this third temple, that it is a godly thing, that the Jews need the third temple. Well, we know they're going to build it. But when ministers are out there teaching that this is a godly thing to be doing, even though they will admit, well, we know that the Antichrist is going to use it for his own purpose, but it's still an ungodly thing. It is demonic. Because you are embracing the law. You're not only embracing the law, do you realize what you're embracing when you embrace the building of the third temple? The building of the third temple reestablishes Levitical law. The Jewish government in Israel, the reason why Netanyahu is creating a right-wing theocracy is because they believe Isaiah 52 was never fulfilled by Jesus Christ. So they believe that the law must go out of Jerusalem. This is why we're having all these wars. Collapse all the nations so you'll become obedient and subservient. Israel will be raised up. And when they're raised up, they will say that we have a law now that can be offered. Notice what I brought out the other day in the news broadcast about Putin and what Putin said. He said there will be a new world order with just laws. Just laws are also the Noahide laws. The quote-unquote 7 mitzvot, which according to Rabbi Tovia Singer is more than 100 sub-laws that go with it. And Rabbi Yitzhak, Mizrahi, very famous Israeli rabbi living in New York, calling on the death of all of those. Well, he doesn't call on the death. He's very careful in the way he words it. He said, according to the Torah, 2 billion Christians should die for idol worship. But he also mentions Hindus, Muslim, well, not Muslims, but Hindus and other religions as well, all for violating the Noahide laws. Do you think it's a coincidence that all the Muslims from Syria and northern Africa and Turkey fled to Europe? They will be there to bring about insurrections and destabilize the nations. What is it? It is the spirit of Barabbas, son in the fire, a murderer. Do you know, by the way, speaking of a murderer, Barabbas was more than just a murderer. He was a murderer of a woman. Didn't know that, did you? We're going to go into that in just a little bit as well. But anyway, don't want to jump ahead of myself too much here. Let's see where we're at here. They found the two witnesses, right? Okay, the high priest arose and said to them, do you not answer anything against the testimony of these that are bearing against you? But Jesus answered not a word. The high priest said unto him, I adjure you by the living God that you tell us if you are the Mashiach, the Messiah, the Son of God. Now, I didn't look at this in Hebrew yet, but let me just quickly look at this real quick here. Let's see, we're going to find, whoop, so don't lose my place here. All right, verse 63. All right. Ani ba'el chai. Okay. Sheta amar lanu im otem Mashiach ben Ha'el. Are you the Messiah, the Son of God? I do find it interesting the way it is written right here. Can't get the word Ha'el to highlight, but that's all right. But he is asking him, Ani Ba'el, I in God, in the living God, Ba'el Chai, Shate Omer, I'm saying to you, Lanu im ata, he's wanting to know if he is the Son of, or the Messiah, the anointed of God, the anointed Son of God. And Jesus answered him, you say it. That would be very, very deep for you to understand really what I am going, where I am thinking I should say about that very passage right there. There's a lot that could be said, and that's why I really appreciate this particular Hebrew version of the book of Matthew. And we know that Matthew wrote in the Hebrew language. That's one of the reasons why I really kind of cherish this book, and I find so much valuable information in it. So yeah, he's adjuring him by the living God. Not quoting any names, just the living God. Are you the anointed Son of God? You say it. But again, I say to you, you have yet to see the Son of God sitting at the right of the power of God, coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his garments and said, this one cursed God. What need do we have for other witnesses? Behold, all of you have heard how he cursed God. How does he curse God? By claiming he's the Son of God, and yet Israel always claimed to be the sons of God. So where was his sin? This is why I have to agree with Pilate. I find no sin in him. I mean, as believers, we all know that. There was no sin in him whatsoever. They spit on his face. He delivers him over, right? They deliver him over and everything. They tell us the Messiah who struck you. They make fun of him. They're making fun of the gift that he had and everything. Peter was standing in interest. We know this is when Peter's going to deny him, etc. And no doubt with Peter, that had to be the hardest thing in the world for him. I mean, listen, we all sin. We all make horrible mistakes in our lives. Things that we regret, things that we're shameful of, and I can't imagine. I mean, Peter's own sins there were for the world to see, Many times we do things and the world doesn't see it. But the thing is the record of what he did is there. So I can only have the deepest and sincerest sympathy for Peter and what he endured, especially because he knew that the Messiah had prophesied it, and then it happens, and he didn't want it to happen. He wanted to be the one. And granted, though, he did pay that ultimate price, because he did lay his life down, and he did die on a cross, and he refused to be hung the way Jesus was, but rather upside down in a greater humiliation, because he really wanted to take that place, but it just was not that hour. So anyway, we're going to chapter 27. It came to pass in the morning, all the chief sages and elders took counsel against Jesus, and that they should surely put him to death. And they led him bound to the house of Pontius Pilate, who was the commander. When Judas Iscariot saw that he had been judged, began to turn in repentance, and he returned the 30 dinars to the high priest and the elders of the people. And he said, I have sinned because I have shed innocent blood. But they said to him, what is that to us? You see to it. So we know how that goes there. Now, what I want to do, though, just for the sake of time, and let me just see here what all I have here before I continue on. Okay, this is where Jesus is prophesying that the temple would be destroyed. The children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knowest not the time of thy visitation. Wow. That was very, very strong words that Jesus said there. And in fact, speaking of that there, before I go a little bit further, let me go ahead and read this as well. Verily, verily, I say unto you, we're in John chapter 10, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same as a thief and a robber. But he that entereth in by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calleth his own sheep by name, and leadeth them out. And when he putteth forth his own sheep, he goeth before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger will they not follow, but will flee from him, for they know not the voice of strangers. This parable spake Jesus unto them, but they understood not what things they were which he spoke unto them. All right, now look at that. Luke, what did Luke say? They shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because you knew not the time of your visitation. And they never could get his parables. Then said Jesus unto them again, verily, verily, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep. All that ever came before me, watch this now, are thieves and robbers. But the sheep did not hear them. There was a reason why he beat the money changers out of there and said, you have turned my father's house into a den of thieves. You have to understand, the ones that had came before him, beginning back with the Maccabees, had overthrew the priesthood, threw out the Zadokite priest, and subverted the kingship of Israel as well as the priest of Israel. They were thieves and robbers. They had no business in the priesthood. He goes on, I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out and find pasture. The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. That's interesting. And even under the law, that's exactly what it is. You kill, destroy. Granted, I understand that was for a period of time. It served its purpose. But when Christ came, he was that redemption of sacrifice. In him was the very life that was to come back upon us to complete our redemption. We'll go into that tomorrow. But otherwise, the thieves that were running the temple, all they did was kill and destroy. They might have life, and I am come that they might have life, and they that might have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. But he that is an hireling, and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, leaveth the sheep, and fleeth, and the wolf catcheth them, and scattereth the sheep. And that's exactly what ended up happening. I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and am known of mine. As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice. And there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life, that I might take it again. No man take it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This commandment have I received of my Father. You see, friends, there's so much could be said there. Let's see. And by the way, we speak about the temple. I wanted to also bring up as well 1 Corinthians chapter 3. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which temple you are. All right. Now, let me back up. I want to get to Barabbas here. Now, when they were gathered together, Pilate said to them, which of these do you wish? Okay, here we go right here. But Jesus did not answer him a word, and Pilate was exceedingly amazed by this. On the day of the honored feast of Passover, it was their custom for the commander of the city to give to the people one prisoner whom they wished. You know, I find that interesting because in the United States, when a president is finishing his tenure, he ends up pardoning a lot of people. I believe it comes from this tradition of Pilate, or in the days of Israel. Pilate had a prisoner who was almost crazy. His name was Barabbas, or, as I said to you, Barabbas, son in the fire, or of the fire, either one. Taken in a case of murder, he had placed him in the dungeon. When they were gathered together, Pilate said to them, which of these do you wish that I should release, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Messiah? And by the way, I think, yes, right here in verse 16. When it's written right here, they don't translate this all correctly. And again, there you are, Barabbas. They put the two little dashes there to give it the sounding of Barabbas, but it still means the same thing, okay, Shomer. But anyway, what it does say here, one thing that's really interesting right here, this is the word right here, Resh Sadi Chet Hey, and if you take it in the context of the way this is written there, he was actually taken in the murder of a woman. And it uses a very interesting word in there, besides the fact that it says that he was, where it says here, had a prisoner who was almost crazy. It's actually like the word for a fool. But it uses another word as well, like very hardened, as the only way I could figure out. It's kind of like, it's actually the word for a certain kind of pear. If you go back into the Greek language, the equivalent to this. And but it's a very hard type of pear. So the only thing I could figure was like he was a hardened, crazy, maniac, lunatic type of man that literally had killed a woman. And that was one thing I thought that was interesting when I read this about Barabbas. And then I look at that also in the respect that when the Jewish people were calling upon his release, that he be the one that should go free. They were calling upon not only a murderer, but a murderer of women. You see, the bride of Christ, or we would say the church in this case maybe, is typed as a woman. And oddly enough, that spirit of Barabbas has carried on for the last 2,000 years. And slowly but surely, that spirit of Barabbas is still being called upon. As I said, even Jonathan Cahn kind of makes light of it. And I'm not here to beat up Jonathan by no means. I don't mean it like that. But it is a very evil spirit, a murderous spirit against the bride of Christ. And when you are still siding with the Pharisees, you see, the Pharisees are the ones that said, let Barabbas go. And when you lock arms, knowing that Jesus said about them that they were the seed of vipers. And granted, I know that some people say, well, it's the extremists, like in Netanyahu's government, the extremists that are calling upon these things. But no, they assure you these laws would never be passed. And then they want to tell you, like for example, that the Noahide laws, they don't really mean what they say. Although the idolatry defined in the Talmud where these laws come from call for the beheading of idolaters, and Christians are considered idolaters. I will take rabbi after rabbi after rabbi and prove that point. In their own words, prominent rabbis. You can call them extremists if you want, or not extreme. Some of these are not even, I don't even consider them extremists. It's just what they believe. When this whole world is turned upside down and every nation has been plundered by war, including the United States, even now they're passing laws in the state of Florida to put you in prison for free speech. And they call it anti-Semitic. That's going to be in every state in this nation, friends. War will change things so drastically that spirit of Barabbas will be released upon the bride of Jesus Christ. And you don't think that there's not more Judases out there that have been sucking up behind the scenes with the Pharisees? Sure they have. Sure they have. This is why I'm trying my best to warn people now. I'm Stephen Bennun. You're watching Israeli News Live. And we do want to thank you for your support. Right above my head here on the screen is our website and our mailing address if God lays it upon your heart to be a support to this ministry. Thank you.